Councilman Brownlee, District 5.
Thank you. That's a very good story, Councilman Jackson. I really like that. Mr. Morris, I'd love to talk with you afterward. There are a lot of concerns from residents and landowners, those who rent out their properties especially, concerns about the building department, needing to wait 4 weeks to get an inspection, and then once the inspection's done, find out you have some things you need to fix, and so then you've got to wait another 4 weeks for a follow-up inspection. So if you're renting out your home at, let's just take a really easy number, $1,000 a month, guess how much money you're out? It's $2,000. That's very significant to anyone who's renting property. So this is a very serious problem, and I'm glad that you came and mentioned it, Mr. Morris. Tonight, there's been a lot of concern, and last week, a lot of concern about the senior center. What's going to happen? The budget that came from the mayor had no provision for it. It's just no provision for it. And there appears to be nowhere else to cut the budget, according to the mayor. So if there's nowhere to cut the budget, and there's no money for the senior center, then what are we going to do? We'll have to either find some money somewhere, extra money coming in from someplace, more revenue, or we'll have to cut some of our other expenditures to make room for the $325,000 that may be necessary to run the center. Part of what's playing into this is a discussion about getting some, quote, extra funds from the trash fund. And this has been talked about since, I think, May. And since that time, I've said only one thing. You cannot use that money for trash on anything else. That's all there is to it. And we received a message from the state auditor's office saying the very same thing, stating that revenue from this fund should only be used for that purpose, collecting garbage. It says the monies in this fund are assessed for solid waste and only solid waste. You can't take them and use them for the senior center. That's what was discussed at the last 2 meetings. And it's what's been mentioned throughout the past 7 months. But it can't be done. The trouble is, we keep wanting to believe that it can be done. But you can see where that's going to lead, right? If you think money's going to come from somewhere, but it's not, guess where that's going to lead you when you finally realize that it's not coming. You're going to have no options left. So I see that this money's not coming, and if we count on it, then the senior center will suffer greatly. If it is the will of council and the mayor to save the senior center, then I implore that you look to other means. Otherwise, it's just a vain pipe dream. It was mentioned tonight. That we could ask our law department what to do in a particular circumstance. The last circumstance in which we did that was whenever this council decided to go against the law, the Ohio Constitution, and try and stop its residents from putting an issue on the ballot, which became issue 99. You notice that issue made it on the ballot. Why? Because it went straight to the Supreme Court and they ruled unanimously that this city was in violation of the law. That blunder cost the city $31,000. Just because the law department says it's okay, doesn't mean that it actually is. This council has, on many occasions, this administration, on many occasions, has disregarded the laws that govern its business. The 2014 budget, this final appropriations, As I mentioned back, maybe April, this city has a habit of passing a budget that doesn't mean anything. Whenever you pass a budget at home, whenever you create a budget at home with your family, the idea is that you'll stick to that budget. The idea is that that budget's realistic. And so you hold yourself accountable to stay within those expenditures that you said. I'm going to spend this much on this much on this. You don't just cast that aside for whatever reason you may find. You want to hold to it. Well, it's even more serious as a city government, because the Ohio statutes state that if the finance director authorizes an expenditure beyond what's appropriated by the legislative body, that's illegal. It's illegal. This has come up actually on our audits in the past. But this administration continues to just ignore it. Instead of coming to council and saying, we made a mistake, like with the $31,000 that this lawsuit cost us, there was no money appropriated for that, but they spent it anyway, illegally. What they should have done was come before council and said, this has come up, emergency meeting, we need to amend this. Then the finance director would have had the legal authority to cut that check. But as it was, she did not. This is the real problem that plagues us in Maple Heights, is that we claim we're going to do one thing and we do something else. We set up a law and then we just ignore it. Like tonight. This council has rules that govern it. And those rules state that legislation must come 7 days prior to the regular council meeting. 7 days prior. But there's a provision for an addendum, which you saw tonight. But there's a deadline for the addendum as well. The deadline for the addendum is noon on the Monday previous to that regular meeting. This addendum came, you saw it come. It came about at 6:30. That's when it came to council. That's when this addendum came. They just ignore it. We can't do this. This is why something like the senior center didn't pass. The senior center levy. Because people say, you know what? You say it's for the senior center. How do I know? How do I know it'll be used for the senior? Sure, you have a rule stating that it's going to be used for the senior center. But I've seen how you disregard other rules. This is about trust, believe it or not. So we can't use that money from the trash fund. And the only people suffering by playing this game out are the seniors, because we aren't looking for those other avenues. So I'm sorry to say that this is what we continue to do. Tomorrow night, I'll have a meeting, another one at the library, 7 o'clock. We'll have a presentation about the finances, a little breakdown, very basic, of the 2015 budget, kind of how all the departments might compare to each other, totals, basic figures, that I think you might find interesting, helpful to you, just understanding how your government runs, where money comes from, where it goes, all those kinds of things. So if you're interested, please come tomorrow night, 7 p.m. It'll be in the library auditorium. And I want to thank the fire department. That was a really wonderful presentation as well. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I didn't have a chance, but thank Techmeyer for putting that together. That was good when you do so. Well, we're at the end of another year. And as for the past, 3, 4, 5 years, we've ended in a deficit. We can't stomach another year of doing so. So something needs to change in Maple Heights. The services are suffering greatly. That's understandable. But the only thing that's going to change it is if this community comes to trust its government again. Then and only then can we begin to turn this thing around. Only whenever we decide to confine ourselves to those things that are legal, then and only then will we find a way forward. When people know that what we say we're going to do, then we can turn the city around. Thank you for coming tonight, and may God bless you, and may God bless the city of Maple Heights. Thank you.
Councilman Trojanski.
Madam President, Yes,
Can I have a few minutes of your time?
absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Trojanski. Thank you, Madam President. I just want to reiterate, because apparently some heard and some didn't. I mentioned to you, the mayor and the finance director and city council were working very hard, and that's why they're having another meeting, and that's why the appropriation bill 2015 was not passed tonight. It was a first reading. You also heard me announce a fundraiser. Did you not?
We heard it.
Thank you. So that is somewhat of a plan. Is it a plan for longevity? It is not. Is it a plan to get us through for the other thing that I'm looking at, which is the consolidation of services with another group of senior centers that would ensure the security and the stability of this program for many, many years to come. The Benjamin Rose Institute has been in existence since 1920. They've absorbed the Golden Age Centers of Cleveland, and they're called the Rose Centers for Aging Well. I hope all of you heard that we're looking into that, but we need time to do that negotiation, and that's what we're asking for. Some time to make that negotiation, show that the seniors, the disabled people in the community, and hopefully down the road the children as well, will be able to have all of the services that the residents of the city of Maple Heights are accustomed to and certainly deserve. Thank you, Mr. Trojanski.
Councilman Trojanski, District 6.
Thank you. I just want to begin by first commending the firefighters and the police officers that were out to respond to that fire. Thank you for your courage and bravery to our city. Oh, sorry. Again, I just want to thank the police department and fire department for the bravery and courage to respond to the fire on Thanksgiving. Mr. Brownlee is a very interesting character, to say the very least. This body is governed by laws, local, state, and federal. And there is a check and balance. There's three branches of government. We have a judiciary, legislative, and executive branch. And so when this body makes ordinances or resolutions, or we make appropriations and approvals for the fiscal budget 2014, 2015 is coming up, there are laws that govern us. There are laws that evaluate and review us to make sure that we're in compliance with the law. I know all through this year since this council has been in office, never have I heard from Mr. Brownlee on a suggestion he has in terms of bringing a plan to the city. While the council and the mayor and all of these department heads were working on contracts with our union employees regarding their health care, working with the non-union employees with their health care benefits, having a contract with dispatchers, police officers, firefighters on their fringe benefits. Also know that employees have not received a raise in the past 6 years. We have closed the pool. We have redone our garbage. We have every contract where there's an opportunity for the city to renegotiate, to reduce our costs. We've done so. The Finance Committee just had a meeting this week to evaluate how we can bolster our income tax collection and how can we go after people who are delinquent in their taxes because the agency that we have currently, RETA, isn't doing what we expect them to do. So we're looking at options. But this is not instant gratification. In addition, you need to also have a governing body that's working together. You cannot have a cancer that's always attacking and misconstruing facts. You cannot have that. Now moving forward, I would like to have Mr. Brownlee submit a plan, introduce legislation, because this body, we are lawmakers. We make and create and pass laws. Now, I haven't heard anything from Mr. Brownlee in terms of a piece of resolution or an ordinance to help move the city forward or to deal with an issue. Never have I heard you give a report on what you're doing for your district and for the constituents that you represent. We're very quick to attack members of this community. And you're always putting your blog, Maple Heights News, as a factual piece of information. It's a blog. It's simply opinion. It's not the plain dealer. It's not a reputable news source. It's not the New Yorker. It's not the New York Times, the San Francisco Times. You're a blog. You're injecting your own personal opinion into this, what you think the city is doing or what you want the city to be. Instead, you could be initiating policies or serving your community rather than attacking the community. Earlier this year, we had a levy in May, which you put out a piece of literature attacking the city and your plan of how you would do things and how the city is irresponsible. Yet you failed to neglect the fact that Maple Heights is an inner-ring community, just like Garfield Heights, Cleveland Heights, all these other communities across this region, as well as across the country, who have been affected disproportionately by outward migration, a downturn in the economy, or the bubble burst of the housing market. So it's not something that just Maple Heights is mismanaging itself. It's a system that's failing us inner-ring suburbs. It's also a failing economy that has not recovered in Greater Cleveland. That's what we're facing. We're also facing a governor who has cut our local government fund. So when you compile the reduction in property income taxes, or the reduction in our local government fund, and a limping economy, those things have a detriment to the city like ours. And you have a state government who's saying, fix it yourself. We're not going to provide you additional resources or additional funding. Go to a levy or outsource your services or find ways to make ends meet. And it's not cutting it. You look at Brooklyn Heights, Richmond Heights, East Cleveland, Garfield Heights, Maple Heights, all these inner-ring suburbs, they're barely surviving because of the same challenges I just mentioned earlier that we're facing. So it's not simply, it's the administration's policies or the council's policies. There's a lot of things that we just don't have control of, and we're responding to the best of our ability. It's not going to be instant gratification. Now moving forward, Mr. Brownlee, I'd like to see you introduce a plan. Make suggestions that are constructive as well as realistic. But don't simply badmouth the body and use it as a wedge issue to bring mistrust from the people and their government. Because you are serving the people in this government. The very institution you're criticizing, you are yourself a part of. So I would take that information very wholeheartedly and do something constructive with it. Now, moving forward, for my district report, now on December 13th, I'm going to have a district meeting for my district, 11 o'clock, in meeting room number 2 at the library. I have 2 guest speakers. There will be Annette Blackwell from First Place, which is a multi-purpose center that's opened up on Broadway in our city. And from the Democratic Party's club of Maple Heights, President Michelle Rudolph, she'll be talking about the party and how you can get involved. So again, that meeting will be Saturday, December 13th, in meeting room number 2 at 11 o'clock. And then my District 6 newsletter will be coming out this Saturday, so please look out for that on your doors. And with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Richard. Councilwoman Agee, District 7.
I would like to thank the fire chief and his men and the police chief and all the men for doing a good job. On Monday, December the 8th, I'm having a meeting with the business owners in District 7 to discuss their needs and concerns. End of report.
Thank you, Edwina. Councilman Adams, District 1.
After the residents in District 1 received notification about zoning changes, I had about 5 calls for clarification. Most wanted to know if their taxes was going up. This issue will be coming before the council, and no, taxes will not be going up. One Turney Road resident came home from work at approximately 2 o'clock and found his fence had been cut down. There had been an ongoing dispute with a neighbor over this fence in the past. So I advised him to call the police non-emergency number to make out a report, and called John Metello at the law department, which he done. Complaint on Lisa Drive that one of the snow plows damaged the roadway. And a complaint about a garbage can overflowing on Turney and Dunham at the old bus stop. Both calls were referred to Tanya at the service department. I went down and checked the garbage box, and it was full. I've been talking about a sinkhole on Rowena Drive since last February. The orange barrel has been blocking the street and the middle of her driveway. There have been many calls from Tanya Black, Service Department, and myself to get the situation resolved. I am happy to say the Water Department has finally filled in and fixed that sinkhole. Hallelujah. She was very, very happy. We will be having a fish fry at the American Legion, Post 309, Friday, 4 to 7. Takeouts available. So when you're out shopping, stop by, have dinner, and keep on shopping in Maple Heights also. I'd like to thank Chief, your men, Police, your men, Service Department, and all involved, the other 12, 13 cities that helped us with that fire. They did a fine job. We're lucky to have such good service departments and men in our city. That's why we should support them. Fannie Mae, we have to congratulate, because they're going to be rebuilding, as you heard from the mayor. So when you're going to be doing your shopping, let's thank them. Read my Facebook. Order a box of candy and give a box of candy from Fannie Mae to someone you love, just to show your appreciation to Fannie Mae from the citizens, residents of Maple Heights.
I like
Let-
chocolate mints.
Thank you, Linda, for that update. Thank you on the donations. And Patricia, be writing me a check before you leave tonight. So don't leave without.
I won't.
As you heard, we on council, most of us on council, are trying to do our best to save human services. I, for one, believe in our seniors. Number one, I am one. I don't have no need for the service at that time, this time, but who knows? At one time, I might have. But the Lord was good with me, and some people need it. And by God, they should have a place to go get their needs fed. We have children that go hungry. We should be there as a city to see if we can supply them the food. We have the unemployed, no fault of their own, that needs a handout every now and then. They have problems with their water, heat, gas. Refer Linda Voback. I want you to call Linda Voback. Up to Human Service. See, and she usually provides them help for sons where they can get help. That's a responsibility, I think, of us administrators, most of us, to provide and do our best to take care of the needy, the sick, the poor. And it's God's will that we do it. So when we get to thinking about this, words that some people want to say about budget, this and that, and I take offense to what Mr. Brownlee said on his, news.com, that the mayor and city council was trying, is stealing your trash. No. We've been debating this, and that you that have been coming to this meetings have listened to this debate. You heard us trying to take all avenues to come to some kind of agreement to finance the Human Service Department till the Ross Group comes in and tells us they might take us over. And let's pray every night that they do. That way, they will take care of our residents for us. And we will provide them a place to do that here in Maple Heights. God willing of the residents. I just can't say it. And then to tag on about the issue 99. We've been all through that. It was put out, assumptions and propaganda, and it was ridiculous. We didn't answer them, and maybe now that we should, but the residents believed it, so they believed it. If they would have waited, it would have went on the ballot, because all of us voted for that issue. It was just following what we as advised our charter. And we would have went to the next step, and that would have been the next step. But we had a group that went out and took a big leap and went to the Supreme Court to get the decision. So that's fine. But that's really what happened. There was no secret meetings. When you see we call special meeting, we're discussing 4 or 5 different issues at a time. I'm not saying you should be here, but get in the habit of checking the Facebook, mine, Tony's, Richard's. Be careful to Maple Heights News, because that's a little slant. And to be called, that was downright dirty to say we were stealing your money. Yeah, enough said about that. We're going to do everything possible by the law in this addendum, which Bill didn't finish, that Kathy and the law director, Blair over there, has advised us again. We can. We did get an email from the state, and again, law department, Kathy, hiring, is checking it out. That's the rest of the story. We're just going forward with the addendum because it has to get out. It's a time issue. It's nothing to pull the wool over your eyes and get past the ordinances. It's a time issue, and that's what we're doing. I have faith in our law director. I have faith in our finance director. I'm asking you to have faith in us council members and our law director and mayor and our finance director. Because that's how we're going to get something accomplished. Help us with donations till Ross Group comes in and hopefully helps us. With that, I am my thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Councilwoman Tony Jones, District 2.
Just checking. Good evening, everybody. Chief Vito, I was never so happy to actually see an unrecognizable phone number on my cell phone, and usually I sometimes wait until it goes to voicemail because you never know if it's going to be a long conversation, or sometimes you want to do some research before you call somebody back, but something inclined me to actually answer, and it was your voice. And it was just so good just to hear that everybody was safe and there were no injuries, and I think that is no small feat, because we all saw the video, and many of us probably saw it either on TV or just whatever was happening from our own windows. And it was scary. And it's even scarier when you're on the sidewalk, that little thingy that you have in your head that was doing all the taping. That had to be scary. And I'm not very creative, but I wrote this down because I thought this was kind of cute, and I made it up all by myself. And what I texted back to you, because I was thinking about the injuries and of all the photographs that you were sending back and forth. And I said something that the angels got a little sooty, but God didn't care. Because they were all there, and each one of you guys had your own special angel, and I'm just glad that everything is good. I'm sorry. I have some extra newspapers from the Brown Report. It is a newspaper that's been circulating around, and everybody's saying that they don't get one because they're pretty much hot off the press, and I think they're only distributed in 2 or 3 different locations here. So feel free to grab one. Linda, you didn't tell us who to make the check out to?
To the Maple Heights Senior Center.
Okay. And I'm also going to request something of Councilman Brownlee. I remember publicly he stated that he was trying to give back, I think it was 25% of his pay. And I think this would be a perfect opportunity to cut a check to the senior center, since you so aggressively acted and worked against the levy, in order to show your support for the seniors and recreation and everything else that that department stands for. So I'm going to be passing down my check for $100. Make sure it goes to Linda, because I didn't write out who it's for, because it's blank. So I think 25% roughly of what we make is maybe a little close to $3,000. How about that? And with that, I end my report.
Thank you, Tony. It's been a very busy week for everybody with Thanksgiving and all of the events that have been happening, but I did want to share a couple things with you. One was the attendance here with a couple of my colleagues at the breaking of the bread, which is held every Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And it's always a really humbling experience to have lunch with the seniors. There's always a minister who comes and gives us words of wisdom. And we had Father Emil this time around, who was he was awesome. Gave us a story and some inspiration to go along with it. And the wonderful people from Bob Evans supplied the turkey. I don't know about the pies. I think they came from somewhere else, but it was Bob Evans also. It was just a lovely time, and I've enjoyed coming ever since Linda invited me many, many years ago, and this was no exception. I've also been attending meetings. Thank you very much for inviting me. The law department in particular. We met with Clear Channel to talk about the possibility of erecting billboards. And we've also been talking with another gentleman who would like to come in and do, actually, we do have a contract pending with the cell towers. So that's always good to be looking forward with some possible revenue coming in. And that's what we need, is revenue. We can slash as much as we can, but we do need the revenue more. I think there was a mention that we need to get back to services. I think we're doing pretty well on our services. I don't see anyone moaning and groaning and complaining that the rubbish isn't being picked up, that the police aren't there. They aren't there instantaneously, but they sure are there when you need them seriously. And of course, the fire department is usually 2 minutes. I don't think, it's still 2 minutes, isn't it, Chief? About 3 now? It used to be 2. It was just amazing. But 3 is pretty doggone good as well. I don't think our services have declined in any way, shape, or form. And I do have to say, that was one of Mr. Brownlee's comments, and that's going to be my last word. Be careful. We have a responsibility to know what's going on in the city, and you have a responsibility to find out, whether it's the newspaper, whether it's the Facebook accounts that some of our council people have announcing the meetings. It's your responsibility, as well as ours, to present that information to you. But be very, very careful. Many, many months ago, our now councilman came and offered to do a Maple Heights newsletter. It was going to be all about the city, with the information of things that are going on in the city. And it's somewhat that now, but it's also become a personal opinion piece. So you have to be really careful when you read all of that information, because it's often twisted. He talks about trust. I don't trust anything that Mr. Brownlee comes forward with, mostly because it's twisted and it's often inaccurate. His figures sometimes are interesting. I love it when there's a comment about sticking to the budget. You must stick to the budget. Well, you know, and we've talked about this before. I can stick to my budget because my money comes in at the beginning of the month, and my bills come in and they're pretty regular. But whoops, what happens? My roof had a hole, my hot water tank blew, and my car had 4 flat tires. So, you know, you had to deviate just a little bit, didn't you? The city's no different, because they don't have a set amount that comes in every month. They have a set amount that goes out occasionally, but it's a flexible, fluid budget. Let's put it that way. It can't be a demanding piece that you can't deviate from. I mean, this is city government, folks. It is not your individual checkbook. So when Mr. Brownlee kind of talks about trust and figures, I'm a little skeptical. Trust is not the word I would use. But, and I do have to mention the strategy for the fire was just, I never knew that there was so much involved. That was a very interesting presentation, and thank you so much for bringing it to us. We do have another council meeting coming up on the 17th. However, as was mentioned by several council people here, we will have another meeting of the whole to discuss more budget. I just have to look at the calendar to set a date, either another Monday or a Wednesday, depending. We will announce that, or the folks who have Facebook will announce it, or call you Councilman. And with that being said, that's the end of my report, and the meeting is adjourned, and I believe it's 8:45. Thank you so much for coming.